All right, good morning, everybody. It's Christian Advantage Medical Testing, and what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about probably the most exciting retail panel that I've seen since we've been running here. This is the Diet and Wellness panel. This is going to retail for $349. We'll talk about that in a bit. So first off, who needs this panel? Well, before we get into this, let's talk about what this panel is not. This panel is not a gimmicky thing where people pay their money, then they get a result that says, yeah, you want to lose weight, just eat right and exercise. That's not what this panel is at all. What this panel is designed for are people that want to lose weight or normalize their weight. Some people actually, believe it or not, want to gain weight. This panel will accomplish both. People with fatty acid and cholesterol issues that they already have knowledge of. People with major weight fluctuations that are losing, gaining constantly. People that actually currently are using supplements for weight control. People that routinely diet. And people with chronic disease and inflammation. All right. Okay. So we're going to talk about the different categories that this test will look at. This test looks at the following criteria. SNPs involving best diet for weight normalization SNPs. SNPs for intensity and types of exercise. That's right, this panel will actually tell you what you need to do to exercise. Fatty acid metabolism, very important. Insulin resistance risk, and some unique genes that go along with diet and weight control. Some of these SNPs you've seen before. So the first section is going to be the best diets for weight normalization SNPs. We're going to look at these genes here, the FAB2. You're going to take a look at that because that absolutely has to do with the binding of fatty acids in the intestinal tract. And the PPARG, that's dealing with how our bodies store fat and fatty acids. The FTO, they actually nicknamed this the fatso gene. And this is dealing with the person's genetic chances of being obese. The ADI-POQ, that's how our bodies will break down the fatty acids. The LEPR, LEPR gene mutation, this deals with how some people may not get a full feeling when they eat with this mutation. The GHRL, that's our the ghrelin actually, and that deals with our hunger feeling. There's a constant battle going on in our bodies, a feeling of hunger and a feeling of being full. These are actually genetically controlled. The PPAR-A, this is going to be dealing with the genetic mutations that will let people know that if by fasting they can actually lose weight. Then at the end of this thing here in the report, it'll tell us about some certain diet recommendations. It may be a low-carb, Atkins kind of keto thing, maybe a low-fat, high-protein, maybe a paleo or just a low-fat diet, low-calorie, etc. So the cool thing about this test, the results are not going to say, listen, in order to lose the weight, you have to do this exactly. No one can offer a panel that says, this is the one and only way that you can lose weight based on your DNA. Plus, if you think about it, how upsetting would that be to somebody if they're told that, listen, this is the diet that you need to be on to lose weight, and if they can't do the diet, then they feel discouraged and defeated. So this panel and the results will give you some options here. Now let's go through the exercise SNPs. If you look at our ADR-B2, ADR-B3, this has to deal with how our genes deal with metabolic rate increases. Again, the ADI-POQ, that's going to tell us whether or not aerobic or anaerobic exercise are more appropriate. I'm sure some of you know or may fall in this category of going to the gym every day, running on the treadmill for 2 hours. And some of us don't even break a sweat by doing that. So this report will actually tell us if that's the way to go. It'll give us specific guidelines on how to exercise based on your genetic makeup. Okay? Instead of saying get on the treadmill for 2 hours, it might say, hey, work 20, 30 minutes doing this type of exercise also. Or some people, may respond to that on the treadmill thing, 2 hours a day deal. Next category, the fatty acid metabolism SNPs. This is going to be dealing with the APOA2 and APOA5. This is how our body handles fatty foods. Insulin resistance SNPs. Again, these should look familiar to these ATG5, ATGs, other SNPs here, dealing with autophagy. And again, autophagy is how our cells detox. So there's some of that in this panel. The 12 and the 16L1, they actually, like I said, relate to the cellular level detox. Also, some insulin resistance and gestational diabetes factors are considered here, along with type 2 diabetes. So basically, if mutations pop up on these two genes that they look at, these are easily treatable with diet and supplements. By the way, obesity is directly associated with insulin-resistant issues. So here's some unique genes that are associated for weight control. You got the MCMM6. This is going to deal with some food sensitivity stuff, because this is important when you have a diet panel. Lactose intolerance specifically. CYP1A2 is dealing with how our bodies metabolize caffeine. Caffeine can be a friend or it can be an enemy. The DRD2, that's the dopamine receptor mutations, and this also works in conjunction with the insulin system. The COMT, we've seen this before in several panels. This absolutely has to do with basically traffic control with these receptors in our brain and in our body. Mutations in this slows down the clearance of those receptors, so it can slow down your metabolism and slow down how your body handles different food. The AGT and ACE, this has to do with blood pressure. Again, remember the ACE is in our lungs, the AGT is in our liver, and that's where our blood pressure is regulated. And so therefore salt is looked at here in this panel, how we handle salt. The ADRA2, and this is going to be relating to how our bodies handle antipsychotic drugs, antidepressant drugs. There is a direct correlation to taking those drugs, which can affect our weight loss or weight gain. One of my favorites, the AOC1 and the HNMT, that's going to be dealing with how our body handles histamines. Again, histamines are present in those foods that we love, like tomatoes and spinach and all these other types of leafy vegetables have a lot of histamines. Histamines actually are related to like leaky gut and other problems that we can have with foods. So this panel looks at that. And our FUT2 will handle the pro and prebiotics SNPs and the mutations there. It'll let us know if we're a producer of natural probiotics or if we have to ingest probiotics or prebiotics. This is a very, very important gene that deals with gut health. And then last but not least for the unique genes is the HLA-DQA1 and DQA2. This has relation to how our bodies handle gluten and casein. So let's get down to the report. This report is actually going to be changing just a little bit. This is the first version. Nothing will be eliminated from the report. There'll be a few things added. I'll talk about that in a minute. So the usual looking report. Now we can see the genes that we're talking about. Remember, green is good, tan or yellow is got some issues, and red is obviously bad. So ignore the stuff in the green. This particular patient here, and the APOA2, this is one of those obesity type of mutations. This is actually going to tell them that, hey, you need to avoid high-fat foods. It's very important for their weight loss. Recommending a long-term, low-fat diet. The key here being is long-term. This is not a quick fix thing. This is going to be a lifestyle change diet plan. Looks like we're good in the autophagy genes here. A little bit of an issue here. Looks like they're making a recommendation for taking a little bit of caffeine or fasting for 12 to 15 hours. All right, we're going to move on to the next part, the lactose intolerance. Looks like this person here has some issues. So they actually have, in this panel, a result that will show them that whether they like it or not, their body does not like lactose. So there's some recommendations here. Avoid lactose, right? Next part, caffeine metabolism. Looks like they're okay. Now you'll notice it says slow metabolizer of caffeine. That doesn't apply if the result is green. Same thing with the next one down, the dopamine receptor. We've got here the COMT. That's a problem with clearing those receptors. So it looks like this. Look at this. Improved response to green tea and green coffee bean extracts. And here's some highly recommended therapies. You should benefit from green tea extract or green coffee bean extract for weight loss. It's amazing stuff, guys. Here's our ACE and AGT. Remember the blood pressure regulators and dealing with salt. Looks like they have a problem here. And so it says, look at this. Be cautious of high salt foods. And another recommendation for lifestyle, they recommend reducing your salt intake. Sugar sensitivity, looks like there's no problem there. Inflammatory and environmental. Look at this. The ALC1 and HNMT. Remember we talked about how our bodies have a backup for dealing with histamines. They've got issues in both. So it says that they have a risk of histamine food reaction. And so here's a recommended therapy, the GI Hist support, and may have difficulty with histamine-containing foods. Again, the ones that we love, tomatoes and spinach and all those leafy vegetables have histamines. But then we come down here to the FUT2. This is the probiotics kind of a mutation that they're looking at. So this person actually needs to ingest prebiotics and probiotics. Remember, prebiotics feed the probiotics. So this person has a problem with producing their own or growing their own probiotics in their gut. So here's some recommendations. We got some gluten and casein sensitivity present here. So here's another recommendation to help with that. Now they may not have celiac disease, but they have issues with their gluten intake. So here's a recommendation. If you're going to eat some gluten-containing foods, here's something to take. Then we get our summary of diet and wellness panel. Just like all of our other panels, it just lays it all out kind of in layman's terms. So we've got, looks like a Mediterranean diet or paleo diet, gives us some choices. Some calorie restriction guidance, fasting guidance, and the exercise is what's important here. Look at this, high intensity interval training. What that means is more than 30 minutes of exercise with the heart rate greater than 70% of its maximum required for significant weight loss. This is important because this diet and exercise, the exercise portion will tell you, hey, running on the treadmill for 2 hours isn't going to work. What you need to do is blast your body for a half hour, sweating. Okay? Very important. This is not a generic report. This is based specifically on this person's genetics. Then we've got some avoidance of high-fat foods. Some of this may seem common sense, but believe it or not, I've seen some samples of these panels here and I was at the seminar where it's actually recommending people eat more fatty foods. Go figure. Recommend a long-term low-fat diet. So this person, when they get these results, should realize that this is not going to fix itself overnight. This is a lifestyle change. They need to have a long-term plan to not eat fatty foods if they want to see some weight loss. Cautions on salt, cautions on histamines, and a little fixer if they do get exposed to gluten or dairy. So this person has lactose intolerance and gluten issues. All right. And along with the report comes some, and the report's going to evolve a little bit to actually give some more visuals on the diets that they can, enjoy the benefit of. But here's what it looks like. Look at this. It gives you a list of low histamine foods. It gives you a list of high histamine foods. So it's not just a narrative. It actually gives them some examples and gives them some guidance. Okay. Again, with the reports come the gene index, some definitions for the person and their doctor. And I got to tell you something. Of all of our panels, we always tell them to have their doctor help them interpret them. This is probably the most user-friendly panel that we have to offer where a doctor may not need to be involved to help them get dialed in with their diet. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and start taking some questions here.